Shalom, shalom, Israel. First and foremost, I want to give all honor, glory, and praises to YAHAWAH, BaHashem, YAHAWASHI, BaHashem, RICANS. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone who taught this truth. Shalom to the mighty Akim and Aqua out there who are diligently waiting to be delivered from this final captivity. And today's topic is going to be about the Ainu, who I suspect are fellow Israelites. Okay. Now, the reason why I suspect that is because a lot of Ainu, well, not a lot of them, but generally the Ainu people, they had to go through the basically virtually the same struggles that the Native Americans had to go through. And I'm gonna get into all of the similarities and whatnot, and uh, and basically show you the evidence. So initially, the people who inhabited the land of the Americas, in North America, whatnot, the United States, so-called United States that is now called the United States, were the Native Americans. And then in for Japan, the people who originally inhabited Japan were the Ainu. Okay, so so far, both of them were the original people, the natives of the land. Now, continuing on, the when they first came to when the Native Americans and the Ainu first came in contact with their respective future oppressors, i.e., the natives with the Caucasians, and the Ainu with the Japanese. One thing that they suffered, the natives suffered. I'm going to refer to them as natives and oppressors. The Ainu and yes, the natives suffered was smallpox. Both both the Japanese and the Caucasians gave both natives smallpox. The natives had not dealt with it before, so it was a new thing, and they got that, and they suffered, and they suffered to it. Okay. Another thing is they trusted them. They were too friendly with these um, newcomers, and as a result, they traded with them, and that trade eventually led to them, the um, the oppressors, um, taking advantage of them. Okay, so uh, as time went on with the trades, they would upscale the pricing of certain things. So, for example, like a samurai sword, or for the Ainu, they would normally get it for like say 2 fish or whatever. As time went on, they would sell a samurai sword for, let's say, 10 fish, just as a dramatization of said example. So um uh so yeah, so of course it um it messed with them, obviously, and it didn't it didn't stop there. So to continuing on, uh, they eventually the Japanese and the Caucasians, they ended up fi- they ended up having to fight against the natives, because the natives, they didn't want to they weren't having the mistreatment and the them taking advantage of them. So with that, they fought, and eventually it was the fights, both fights, probably not the exact same time, but both fights eventually led to a stalemate where they wanted to talk peace and say, okay, so let's not fight and whatnot. So they made it a peace treaty, but um the Japanese and the Americans both broke the peace treaty and attacked the natives. And that is crazy. It's very crazy how it these two different people, the Caucasians and the Japanese, they both basically so far are doing the exact same things to them. Okay, it's and one thing I don't believe in coincidences, and I believe it's all to the spirit that they had to go through the exact same thing, and we're gonna get into more of it because it's not just, oh, they broke the peace treaty. And another thing to note is for the Japanese, uh, it's very unusual because I once heard from the few opportunities I was able to learn about some customs in Japan is that the Japanese are usually very honorable. They had the samurai and their code of honor and whatnot, but the Japanese, they didn't honor their peace treaty. They broke it to get an advantage against the Ainu. So with that, with that, the reason why they actually broke it is because they didn't see the Ainu as humans, much like how the Caucasians didn't see the Native Americans as humans. They just saw them as servants. Okay, so again, even furthermore, there so far we have they both got they both fell to these new unknown diseases. They were mistreated with trade. When they fought, they brought it to a stalemate, and which led to a peace treaty, which then led to the peace treaty being broken by the people coming into the land, the oppressors. So, but the Caucasians and the Japanese. So far, like it's a literal parallel of what happened. It's way too convenient. All right. So far, to the spirit of they're basically uh I would have to say so far that they're basically, Israelites. But of course, we're going to go more into that. So, firstly, let's see this video.
They would make fine servants with
So, this is what Christopher Columbus said about the Native Americans when he first saw. This is Christopher Columbus,
wrote in his log.
The so-called man who, quote unquote, discovered America.
They would make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. Columbus proceeded to unleash a reign of terror unlike anything seen before. When he was finished, 8 million Arawaks, virtually the entire native population of Hispaniola, had been exterminated by torture, murder, forced labor, starvation, disease, and despair.
Yeah, and also um, this isn't even just well, technically, yeah, it's Native Americans, and by Native Americans, he said Hispaniola, so the Hispanics as well. So it's not just the North American Native Americans, the South American, the so-called Hispanics as well. So already we can see the similarities at how they had to suffer. All right, and I don't have a quote, but that's just that's what my research paper showed, and you can Google and verify everything that I'm saying. Go double check it, but not. Don't just take my word for it.
It is my purpose to utterly exterminate the Sioux. They are to be treated as maniacs or wild beasts, and by no means as people with whom treaties or compromise can be made.
Okay, yes. What yet again? Another proof showing that they didn't they didn't uh, they didn't see them as people. They didn't see them as humans. They just said, maniacs, wild beasts, barbarians and whatnot, as the Japanese said barbarians. All right, so uh, uh, a lot a lot of evidence, not a lot of evidence, show goes to show how they're the same people. After the after the defeat of the natives, in the aftermath, they basically became dependent on their uh, on their oppressors. So now, oh, another thing I failed to mention was during during their fights and whatnot, when the natives were losing, um, they one some of the things that they did was kill kill the animals that was around them. So, like for example, um, if if for the buffalo and whatnot, that's in America, they would kill them, get and take all the surrounding resources, so that the Native Americans can't go hunt for food and resources. And then for the Ainu, they would do the same for the land animals as well as the fish in the rivers. So what the thing that they did in the rivers though was called placer mining, which redirected the flow of rivers. Actually, placer minings which redirected the flow of the rivers and kills a lot of aquatic life. Okay, so because placer mining often occurs within a stream bed, it is environmentally destructive type of mining, releasing large quantities of sediment that can impact surface water for several miles downstream of the mine. So like some stuff like putting chemicals and whatnot in the water, and then that contaminates the fish, and then as a result, the fish they uh they die, and then they become, because of the chemicals, they become inedible. So that mess with the their ability to fish. All right, so um so they basically had to rely on, okay, so you need to trade with me to get um, food and resources and whatnot. And of course, like I mentioned before, they they had the they had upscaled the pricing of stuff. So they would have to the natives would have to give a lot to get something from the um, the natives, to get something from their oppressors. All right. Okay. So um, and another thing, just to point something out, let me get a scripture on that, because even today, uh, Israelites are pretty. Israelites are poor and very dependent on not only Esau but by extension Ammon. Okay, so Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 29, and thou shalt grope at noonday, as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee. Okay, so uh, we're not Slakia. Well, yes, I guess but generally they're not. The natives in this context, I'm gonna speak for them, speak about them, Slakia, not for them. They're not prospering. Even today, the Native Americans, they tend to be very poor. They're in poverty. And if you go to Japan and if you see Ainus, the Ainus are usually very poor. Okay, so, and on top of that, the Ainus aren't are being discriminated. So they're being oppressed. They're not. They don't have their own land. They don't have their own glory and whatnot. All right. Verse 30, thou shalt betroth a white boy. Well, we can get into that. I'll get back out. Oh, well, let's just get, well, I'll get into that. Okay, so let's get into that. So now what happened is they wanted to, after all the fighting and whatnot, they wanted to assimilate the Ainu into Japanese culture, as well as assimilate the Native Americans into, well, white Caucasians don't have culture, but they just want to assimilate them into their societies. All right. So now what they did in for the Ainu, they took their men and they put them they they moved their men into very far away places, far away from their families, and put them to work for a living. They were so they were deported and for 5 to 10 years working under the Japanese, and they were basically conditioned to forgetting their heritage. As a so they had the Ainu men. The men were like, "Okay, so you have to forget all about being an Ainu. You can't speak your Ainu. All that was banned and whatnot. Learn to be Japanese. Practice all this Japanese stuff. We work for us Japanese now." That's what they did for the Ainu men. For the Ainu women, they would take the Ainu women and put them with Japanese men. Take these married Ainu women, put them with Japanese men, and to marry these Japanese men to assimilate. So to assimilate the women, the Ainu women next. So with that, they would rape the Japanese men would rape them and them into force them into marriages that way. So that's so far that's what they did with the men and the women. And now for the children, both what they did in America and in for the Ainu, they took their kids and they took their kids, moved them far away from their families, once again, uh, separated them from their families, and took them to a school meant only to only to de native nativize them, like turn them into Japanese kids, Japanese learning kids, or Caucasian learning kids to make them to absorb them into the society. Okay, and even just recently, they said, "All right, there, perfect. Okay, more than 200 bodies found at Indigenous school in Canada." Okay, so this is what they were doing for the Native Americans. I don't have the details for the Ainu schools, but for the Native Americans, what they did was they would force the kids that they take into um, doing a lot of manual physical labor, doing lots of physical labor. So that led to over exhaustion, and that would kill that killed a lot of kids. Um, yeah. So so basically, the they took their kids to a school to teach them, to re-educate them, to drop their native practices and customs, and learn their oppressors natives Slovakia languages and customs. So, and with that, for the Native American only, I don't have the details on the Ainu, but for the Native Americans, in while the children were at that school, they would force the kids to do um, lots of manual labor, leading to overexhaustion, leading to death for the kids. Okay, and this is just one example. 215 children were dead, were found dead, but it could be more. Continuing on, um, so because because of this, because of all that happened, they lost touch with their heritage, so they don't know. They basically don't know much about you know who they were back then. They don't know their own real history. And at one point, it says that they were banned from talking about their history. So even more so of even more so evidence that they were like for the Japanese said that you're not allowed to speak Ainu nor talk about your history, and that all that even just furthers um, further proves what they had to go through. And going back to the scripture in Deuteronomy 28 verse 30, thou shalt betroth a wife, and another man shall lie with her. Thou shalt build an house, and thou shalt not dwell therein. Thou shalt plant a vineyard, and shalt not gather the grapes thereof. Okay, so they um like I said before, they had um their wives taken to marry Japanese men, and the Japanese men would rape them. Okay, in verse 31, thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes, and thou shalt not eat thereof. Thine ass shall be violently taken away from before thy face, and shall not be restored to thee. Thy sheep shall be given unto thine enemies, and thou shalt have none to rescue them. Okay, thine ox shall be slain before thine eyes. Okay, and the your ass is going to be violently taken away from before your face. The ox, the ass, the sheep, all that is their property, and you could literally say it. It is referring to property, but you could also literally say that because, like I said before, they went around and killed all the animals so that they couldn't eat um eat you couldn't um eat whatnot. So it's more than just food and whatnot. Okay, so and like it happened to both of them. Okay, verse and no one and no, and even today, right now, um, to this day, the Native Americans still are. They don't have ownership. They don't have their land back. The so-called Americans are are still occupying the land. The Japanese are still occupying the land and whatnot. They don't have ownership. They don't have rulership over their land. All right. Verse 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thy eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall no might, and there shall be no might in thine hand. No might in thine hand. There was no might when the Japanese. There was no might when the Caucasians came and took their children and separated them from their families. All right. This is the curses at work. Both of them, not just one. Both of them. Verse 33. The fruit of thy land and all thy labors The fruit of thy land and all thy labours shall a nation which thou knowest not eat up, and thou shalt be only oppressed and crushed alway. So again, another curse. The fruit of thy land, the the what their land has to offer, all their labors, and the Ainu, they were slaves to the Japanese as well. All right, and the nation took it and they ate it up. They consumed it. They took it for themselves. And now both the Ainu and the Native Americans are being oppressed, even up until this day. Okay, uh, I believe it was the 1600s actually for the Ainu. So now, in today's in each society of today, uh, one thing is that you have a lot of Native American children. They just grew up. They grew up in Caucasian homes, and for the Ainu, what they did is basically a lot of them. A lot of them, they don't claim Ainu because they want to avoid discrimination, and the reason for that is because Japan is a very homogenous society. They really hate when people are different. They want everyone to conform into one way, one society and whatnot. So obviously if you see, oh, these people dress different, acting different and whatnot, um, the Japanese are gonna have a problem with it. Okay, these are some Ainu people. These are what some Ainu people look like and whatnot. A lot of them, like over here, she looks very Japanese, and this guy, he looks a little more uh browner, I guess, a little more on the Middle Eastern side. So even now, if she might not be an Ainu, she might be her father might be Japanese. So it just show it. It could show it. This could just show that more so that the real Ainus or the real Israelites, whom I believe the Ainu are Israelites, it's more through we have to search for them through the spirit of because because of all the mixing that they did. They were assimilated. So the men they got with Japanese women, the Ainu women were raped by Japanese men. Okay, well maybe she is Ainu, maybe she's not. Who knows? Uh, Only the Most High, YAHAWASHI. So yeah, uh, let me continue on. Lamentations chapter 5, verse 1. Remember, O Lord, what is come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. Our inheritance, our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens. Okay, so the both the Native Americans and the Ainu, they have their land stolen from them by so-called aliens, which aliens are basically just strangers from a foreign land. Verse 3, we are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows. Okay, so the like I said before, the children they were taken to at school. They were taken to school to re-educate them. Okay, they don't have parents and their mother are as widows because basically because the men took them and raped them. All right. Verse 4: we have drunken our water for money. Our wood is sold onto us. Now, one of the brothers on GMS, they made a perfect. They basically broke this down very perfectly. Uh, Water, we have drunken our water for money. We have to pay for water. Like that's that is a very outlandish thing to say. The earth, according to Esau, is 75% water, and we have to pay to drink it. All right, and then our wood is sold onto basically for the water thing. Sticking to the water thing for now. The vote all the Israelites, we have to pay for our water. And then our wood, resources we have to buy from Esau, from our oppressors. All right. It's a very crazy, it's a very crazy thing to think. It's a very crazy thing to process. Okay, Micah chapter 2, verse 1. Woe to them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it, because it is in the power of their hand. Verse 2. They covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. All right? They oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Okay? That's what the Ainu and the Native Americans do. Okay, so we all know the Israelites had to go through it, but basically the purpose of this video is to reveal, if we didn't already know, that the Ainu are Israelites, and I'm basically trying to prove that, with all this evidence I'm showing you, the similarities with the Native Americans, all these scriptures and whatnot. Okay, so the Ainu, they were oppressed they were oppressed, and they weren't allowed to practice their heritage. Even though, of course, I'm not saying that, oh, the Ainu need to go back to practicing Ainu heritage, because just like the Native Americans, the both the Ainu and the Native Americans, they were practicing idolatry. We all the Israelites were, well, most of the Israelites, I'm sure, were practicing idolatry. Okay, we weren't keeping the law, statutes, commandments. We weren't worshiping the Most High Power, YAHAWASHI. All right, so that's why all this happened. All right, but of course, free will doesn't exist, and it was all intended to happen. But that's going too semantical. Verse 3. Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, against this family do I devise an evil, from which ye shall not remove your necks, neither shall ye go haughtily, for this time is evil. In that day shall one take up a parable against you, and lament with a doleful lamentation, and say, We be utterly spoiled, he hath changed the portion of my people. How hath he removed it from me? Turning away, he hath divided our fields. All right. So the field, the field, the land, all that, it's it's not theirs anymore. They lost it. Okay. They still have Esau slash Ammon's foot on their neck. They don't have their quote unquote freedom. They don't have their they don't have their land. It's still owned by Hokkaido is still owned by Japan. America is still owned by Esau. All right. So like this is what I'm trying to show. This is what I'm trying to present to the nation of Israel, the 1/3 who are currently waiting to be delivered from this captivity. I pray this lesson was eye-opening, maybe not so much edifying, because I am open to being wrong. Maybe there are some details that me not being in Japan I miss. Me being not being in Japan I just don't know of. One another thing that before I forget to mention it is Hokkaido has while I could not find the demographics for Japanese prison, Hokkaido, which is where most of the Ainu stay, Hokkaido has the main Japanese prison. And another thing I forgot to mention, that's why I need to make a part 2 of this, is that the Ainu don't just stop in Japan. They also were in Russia. I believe these two islands, Kamla something and Sakhalin. Okay, so there's a there's some more information to it that I just didn't get to it yet in this video because I believe this video is too long. I think it's like um it's actually see, yeah, it's over 30 minutes. So because this video is too long, I'm gonna end it here. All right. So I just wanted to bring that out that this that the Ainu, I believe, are Israelites. There's a lot. I just showed a lot of similarities that they have to the Native Americans. All right, and I brought out some scriptures, a few scriptures to, you know, support my point in my argument. All right, so um, if the Ainu are the Israelites, I pray you the the last remnant, the last 144 are sealed with this video because I hope the Ainu that I hope the Ainu watch this video. I hope the Ainu come into this truth. I hope the Ainu, you know, come to their brethren and whatnot. If you are an Ainu and you speak English, you know, DM me. Hopefully, I can help you out, bring you some teach you and whatnot. But or you could go to GMS if you speak English and learn from them. But yeah, with that, I want to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahawashi, Bahashem Rakakwadash. And with that, I want to say Shalom.